Nicer weather too. A lot of people are outside, so.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, Carnivore Hunters, this is Rick.
Hello, I'm
And
Laura from Healthy Carnivore.
hey, so today we wanted to talk to you about blood pressure, and what led us up to this is last week I we have a blood pressure machine at work, and this machine is similar to what you'd have in the pharmacy that you sit down and then you put your arm through the cuff and press a button and it automatically takes your blood pressure and I was getting a pretty good blood pressure initially. I was getting one low 120s over 80, and I was kind of shocked because I hadn't taken my blood pressure in a week or two, and so it came way down. I was really happy with it. Um, and so in our gym at work, we have another like a home style blood pressure cuff. So I went and I took my blood pressure with that, and it was 130s over 80s. And I was thinking, man, I something's not jiving here. At like one needs to be calibrated or something just that wasn't adding up. But then I realized while I was sitting in the gym, I was measuring the other arm. So I switched the cuff in the gym back to my left arm, and then I was getting 140s over 80s. And so I was just talking to Laura about that, and part of that might have been I was getting agitated because I wasn't seeing any consistency. But that's my first question for Laura: is it common to see a difference in blood pressure? Because I didn't know from your left to your right.
Yeah. And so absolutely, I was a cardiac nurse for over 8 years, and I could tell people what arm they used to write with based on their blood pressure, about 99% of the time, because the arm that you use has a little more muscle in it, all in the areas where the arteries are. So it presses against that, and you will have a little bit of an elevated blood pressure, anywhere from 10 to 20 points different in that arm. So that is something that we do see. So when we are training people like at home to do their blood pressure, I always say same time of the day, make sure your bladder's empty, make sure you're not upset, and do it the same arm, same way. Make sure it's the same style cuff, utilizing these different cuffs, these machines that are in these other facilities, they are not calibrated often. So those are computers. So if you think about when you're in the hospital, if you've ever had a blood pressure cuff on and you had a high blood pressure, and the next time when it blows up, it goes even higher because it expects it to always be that high. That's kind of how those machines are going to do the same thing. So the person that was in there before you could have had something higher, could have had something a lot lower. And then when it goes to read yours, it's actually still doing off of what that person had prior to you. So that's the bad
Hmm.
thing about utilizing those types of machines. Like you said, the kind that's at the pharmacy or something like that, they're not accurate. So you're better off to have whatever style you use, whether it's one that you bring up on your arm, whether it's one that you do on your wrist, doesn't matter which style you use, as long as that's the one that you use every time. And even with that, after about 3 to 6 months, sometimes you're either you should get a new one or you should take it in and see if your doctor's office can calibrate it. They used to do that. I'm not sure if any of them still know how to do that.
You know, when I first started this whole carnivore journey, and I even have a video about this, that I took my blood pressure cuff into my doctor's office just because I wanted to see the difference between the medical assistant or the nurse, what they were seeing
Sure.
compared to what I was seeing. And if I remember correctly at the time, I want to say my home one was like 5 points higher, somewhere around there. Definitely on the systolic. I can't remember on the bottom number if it was higher or not. I, now I wish I would have looked at that before we did this video, but it's out there if you guys want to watch it. But so it's interesting. You're saying every 3 to 6 months these should be calibrated. You think?
Absolutely. Yep, because they're just a mini computer. They move around, they get bumped. Anything like that can just put them off. They're not Nothing is going to be as accurate, in my opinion, as having somebody that knows what they're doing, taking a blood pressure manually. I really, in the hospital, in the cath lab, we did not utilize the machines to do your blood pressure that we were charting. We may do it after you've had a heart cath for a little while, but we always came over and manually did your blood pressure to put that in. We were just told that we were not to put down what the computer had. It's what do you get when you actually do that blood pressure. So the other thing is a lot of people don't understand what blood pressure is actually reading. So systolic is the top number, and that is actually referring to the amount of pressure experienced by the arteries while the heart is actually beating. So it's during the beat. And then the diastolic blood pressure, which is the bottom number, it's referring to the amount of pressure that's in the arteries when the heart is relaxed. So that's in between beats. It happens very quickly. But that is what those two numbers represent. It's during the heart contraction, and then the lower bottom part is during the relaxation of the heart.
Okay. So so are you trained on calibrating, or who do you
Well,
who does
what
that?
it used to be just in your doctor's offices, like your cardiac clinics, things like that. You might be able, and I don't know if you still have your little booklet with that, but you could look at that and there may be a number in there that says where you can send it to make sure it's been calibrated, make sure it's up to par. And if you're getting consistently a lot of times at home the same area, you're probably okay yet. But I just know that with my brother-in-laws, and of course he puts his on like 7 times a day because he's fanatic about knowing what his blood pressure is. And
Me
he
too.
does get yeah, and he gets white coat syndrome, and then he gets mad very easy too. And I'm like, well, it's going to be higher because now you're mad because it was a different number than what you wanted it to be. And then he spikes it. And then he's like, see, and then he goes, now my ears are ringing. I'm like, great, great.
Right.
Last thing we need. Yeah. Nobody having a stroke, please.
Yeah, no doubt. Um,
Yeah.
well, what else would you like to share about?
So,
I'm kind of doing this as a knowledge base for because I think a lot of people are not doing 100% correctly when they're doing their blood
yeah,
pressure, and maybe
yeah,
they think they are, but they're missing a step or two. So,
yeah.
uh,
So I always recommend if you're at your own home, you should either do it first thing in the morning or in the evening, but you have to kind of do it consistently. I wouldn't do it a lot during the day unless you're having some symptoms that you're worried about. But I would pick a time and I would have paper that says date, time, and this is what it is, what arm you did it in. But I would always use the bathroom first, make sure your bladder is empty. You want to be relaxed. If you went up a flight of stairs, you need to wait 10 to 15 minutes before you take it. And then you need to have your feet flat on the ground. So if you're sitting in a chair, a couch, wherever you're sitting, you want to make sure that your feet can actually touch the floor flat footed. And that's whether you're doing it at home or whether you're going to a doctor's office. So I always recommend to people that's the first thing they want to slap on you is start doing these vitals. And you've maybe walked up 2 flights of stairs and then through the parking lot and all these other things. And that's not going to be an accurate read. It can be as high as 30 points too high, higher than what you really would be if they would let all these other factors, be taken care of. So I always recommend going to the bathroom first, being calm, feet on the floor, those kinds of things. The other thing is you got to make sure it's the right cuff size for your body. It doesn't matter if you're an adult and the cuff says adult. It needs to be based on how big is your arm, and so
yeah,
that's, yep.
yeah,
And it's pretty easy to tell if you don't have the right size because if it's too small when you first put it on and you get get it around so that the velcro is attached, if it's not the right
yeah,
size and if it's too small, yep, it will
yeah,
actually just pop right off or try to
right,
pop off the majority of the way. And if that happens, you're not getting an accurate read either. With the wrist, you want to make sure that the part that you read the thing on it, I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they have a display. You want to make sure that that's facing out away from the wrist. And then when you push the button, you want to take that arm and you want to put it up chest high. And you just want to kind of lean it up against your chest until it's done taking the blood pressure. For
So
wrist, that's
we
the most
we
accurate.
actually we actually do have a wrist one, and um, I quit using it. Ever since we started this carnivore lifestyle, because all the research I've done say that those are way inaccurate, and so I don't even. I still have
Yep.
it, but it just sits in our bathroom cabinet, and
Yeah.
we probably ought to just throw it away. I'm thinking, especially since
Yeah.
we have this one.
Yeah. And most, I don't know any doctor's offices that use them, but I know a lot of people do use those for home use. My brother-in-law, had that, and we did the same thing. We're like, get rid of it. It's not as accurate. Um, if you just move a little bit, if you, take a deep breath while it's going, if you have Parkinson's or you have a tremor, forget it. It's not going to be a good read because it's going to pick that up when that's happening. So, um, the other thing is you definitely want to have an arm that you use every time for your blood pressure, whether it's right or left, whether it's your dominant or not. That needs to be the one that you want to do. And if, let's say, you get a blood pressure and you're like, I don't think that's right, and you pump it right back up, not accurate. You need to wait 2 to 5 minutes between doing a blood pressure on that same arm, whether you're in a hospital, a clinic, or at your home or out and about. Never let somebody turn right around and do that again because it's useless. Just because of the act of squeezing that artery has changed how that's going to fill, and it's going to be inaccurate. Um, so that's what
So
I would do, and that's just what I recommend.
I have a quick question. I was in my doctor's office 6 months or so ago, and I feel like I've really educated myself on this, and so she's taken my blood pressure and she put the cuff over my sleeve, and I said, "Aren't you supposed to raise that?" And she's like, "Well, I can, because the stethoscope." She's like, "Oh, I can still hear it. I'm good." And I'm like,
That's not the point.
Everything I've read, yeah, everything I've read says make sure your sleeve is
Yep.
pulled up." So
Yep. Yeah, no, you also don't want to. I've seen people go, "Oh, I can do it through their robe," and it's like I can hear it, and I was like, the point isn't you hearing it or not; it's whether you're getting an accurate read because that can add 10 points just by having a shirt, and even just a thin shirt. So just think if you had a robe on, what good is that even? I mean, it's just stupid. That's just
yeah,
laziness. Yeah,
yeah,
but I
I
just
just
call it out.
and the other thing is too, like, you're supposed to have the cuff at about heart level, correct? And
Yep,
that's another thing I've noticed with some of these medical assistants or nurses. They'll just kind of drop your arm and start going to town with their little pump, and I'm
yep,
thinking it goes against everything I'm reading on the proper way to do your
yeah.
blood pressure.
Well, and it goes against everything that they should have been taught in whether they're an MOA, which is the medical office assistant, whether they're an LPN, an RN, tech, it doesn't matter. We were taught, to have somebody sitting there, usually by a counter if you're in the doctor's office, and you do that. You put your arm up and you set your hand facing up so that they can put the stethoscope, on your artery there, and that you leave it at that level, and you want to make sure that when you're putting that blood pressure cuff on, that the part that has the hose is right above, like I said, it's like right across here. So you
Yeah,
want that
so
there.
like with mine,
It should show it on
it
there.
shows the
Right. Yep.
artery mark.
Yep.
So yeah,
But do you
so
know
you
how many
you
times I've seen them have that turned around facing the back,
here. I'm
facing
going
their
to pull this
chest, and
down.
I'm like, that's no good. You need to have it correctly over their arm.
Yeah. So
Yep.
you want the sleeve out of the way, and this is kind
Yep.
of hard to do one handed. Now the position up and down here is important too, right?
It
So
is. Yeah,
uh,
it needs to be up above that. If it's over your AC, your anticutable, it's not going to read correctly. Yep.
that looks correct.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so now tightness. How tight should this be?
It
I,
doesn't have
I
to be skin. You should be able to put 2 fingers under it.
okay, that's what I've heard.
Yep.
Now the other thing I've noticed though is I can get 2 fingers here, but not here. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's because your muscle's bigger at the top part of your arm compared to the lower part. So
Okay.
that's normal. Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
And then you would just want to have it like you have it. Yep. And like if you
Yeah.
had something, you could set it on. And like, let's say if it's the machine, then you would have the machine turn on. If it's me, that's when I would put my stethoscope on. And that's when I would put, and that's the other thing. I've had them put it like right in the center of somebody's arm. So like right here. And I'm like, what are you listening to? A tendon? Because artery is here. The other artery is over here. I'm not sure what they're listening to. Um, and I myself have had I've went into a doctor's office and I try to never wear like my nurse's uniform. I usually wear one of these shirts. It's like a snarky shirt. But I just don't go in with them having the knowledge that I'm a nurse. And I've had 2 instances. One, she didn't even do my blood pressure. She didn't even do a pulse ox. She, as she was doing something one-handed, put her hand over and felt my pulse, wasn't watching her watch. She had a watch that didn't have a second hand, so even if she would have been looking at her watch, I'm not sure what she would have been catching.
Huh.
And she did do my temperature, and then when my practitioner came in, she says, "Oh, I've got to do a printout for hypertension." And I said, "What?" I said, look at my paperwork every time I've ever been here. Look in the computer system. What do you see about my blood pressure? 80 over 48, 90 over 52. Do you ever see it over 100? Ever, ever. And she was like, no. And I said, what is it today? And she goes, well, it was 138 over 78. And I was like, how the hell did she get that? Because it said she didn't put a blood pressure cuff on me. I said, what was my pulse? And she said, oh, it was high too. And I said, dang, wrong again. What is my pulse always run? You've been my practitioner. At this point, this lady had been my practitioner for 7 years. And she says, oh yeah, you always run in the 50s. Yeah, you run low. And I said, nope. And I said, what was my oxygen level? She goes, oh, 100%. I said, denied. I said, I'm asthmatic. I'm lucky if I get 98. Even,
Right.
yeah, that's just my normal. And I said, so she needs re-educated. I don't want her fired. I don't want her written up, but she needs to be educated on how to do it. And then another lady at the same office, it was the last time I went there that they were done at that point. She put on a large cuff, like somebody who's like 300 pounds, and she had it wrapped around. I mean, it was just, and I said, do you have a cuff for my size of arm? And she was like, I don't, it's fine. It's the same thing. And I'm like, it's not. I said, now, if you want to do that on my thigh, you can do a thigh blood pressure with that size of a cuff on me. That'd be fine, but that's not going to be accurate. And she went into this big spiel about how I didn't know, I'm the patient. She went to MOA school. She knows what she's doing with blood pressure. And then I let her have the knowledge that what I was. And I was active. I was currently cardiac cath lab nurse at that time when that happened. And I was like, well, let's talk about mean arterial pressure. Let's talk about MAP. Let's talk about, and then she was like, uh, and I was like, dude, like, just get somebody else. And in fact, I made the practitioner. When she came in, I said, I'm going to have you do my vitals because I don't know what's happening with your staff, but this is twice. And this will be the last time because I'm not coming back because at least I know what to look for. But how many patients come in here and they just throw out some number and you're going to medicate somebody based on a number that either wasn't even taken or they don't even know how to take it correctly. And how many times does that happen? I can tell you it happens a lot. I see it a
Wow.
lot.
Makes you
Yeah.
think. So, quick question. You said have the arm up, like so, palm up,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it, so I'm not using a stethoscope here. I'm just taking my own blood pressure, but I
Mhm.
still would want to do it this way.
You
Or does
would.
it matter if I just, okay, so
I would
That's
still
interesting.
hadn't heard. Yep.
I did not know that. So while you talk
Yeah.
about your next thing,
Yeah.
I'm going to take I'm good to go. My bladder's empty. My feet are flat on the floor. I've got the cuff on properly. I think I'm good to go here. So
All right.
since this is going to take a minute or two, I'm going to make a
Yep.
prediction and say I'm going to be a little elevated because I was telling Laura earlier for you viewers that um, I've been switching back and forth between a night and a day shift, and so I'm a little beat up right now. So I'm going to predict a little bit elevated, but we'll see.
That is true. Things that can cause the blood pressure to be high. Um, it can be that people that are medicated are not taking the right amount of medication. That's people who are on the standard American diet for the most part. I do think that some people that eat the carnivore or ketovore still have to do that for a while until the body's healed. Then once the body is healed, they're usually able to get off of those things. But like me, I mean, I have to take asthma medicine. I take one thing every day. Gonna have to take it. Maybe someday that'll be a go away. I don't know. I'm not sure. What was your number?
Not good at all. My pulse looks better
Uh-huh.
than normal.
Okay.
149 over
Yep.
97.
Yep.
So, uh, yeah, like I said, I have not been sleeping well because I had to switch back and forth between night shift and day shift, and I'm still trying to play catch up. So uh,
Yeah.
that's kind of surprising actually, because I have been like mid 120s, and my diastolic for has been consistently 80 for about a week or two now. So that's a little surprising.
Well, and that's all it really takes is your circadian rhythm is extremely important when it comes to any of your vital signs. So having that thrown off when you're going back and forth between shifts, night shift workers tend to, I mean, I don't know a night shift worker that doesn't end up with high blood pressure. I don't know any. And I worked with some where I did like first or second, but I'd usually get off by 10 or 11 and they would come in at like 9 and work until 6 in the morning. Every one of them was on a handful of medications because you don't get the same kind of sleep. You don't get the same quality of sleep.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate.
Typically, I try to, so I go 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. is what I work. And
Right.
so even on my days off, I I try to keep a pretty close schedule, so I'm not changing it too much. But this last instance was because I was helping with a Memorial Day ceremony, and I just had to be up way earlier than I normally am. So
Yeah. Um, yep. So I would definitely, and the other thing is most of the time, and I'm not assuming, but most of the time when you switch shifts and do that, we tend to utilize caffeine and different things like that to help us. And I'm not saying you did, but that
I did.
will,
I didn't even
yeah,
think about that. I did have some caffeine today, and my last one was probably an hour or two ago. How long is caffeine going to keep you elevated?
it's going to be in your body for up to 12 hours. It is a strong, potent drug. um,
Interesting. Good to know.
yeah, but that doesn't surprise me because that's the other thing I would notice is a gentleman I worked with at one of the factories. I mean, he would bring a thermos of coffee, and I mean, it was trucker coffee. When it poured, it barely poured. I mean, it was thick,
It's like tar.
and it was kind of like axle grease. I used to be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's your axle grease," yeah. And he uh, he finally got. I don't remember if his wife started switching him to decaf. He still had the coffee, but it was decaf, I think. And his color improved. Like he had this gray look to him all the time, and I was like, Marv, what are you doing? I said, you're getting pink. And he goes, I don't know. Well, he didn't make his own, lunch or anything. She made his lunch for work and made his drink and everything. And I said, well, whatever she's doing, it's getting better. But we noticed that his blood pressure changed, and like because he was talking about we had that where you can get some money off of like how much your insurance costs at your workplace, depending
Hmm.
on your vitals and your numbers and stuff. And his had gotten better, and so he was going to be able to have more money taken away that he didn't have to spend for his insurance. And I was like, oh, so just that. And he was still on nights. He stayed on nights till he retired. Um, and he actually, this is funny, I ran into him because he golfed. And I ran into him and I said, did you go back to, did you still try to sleep the way you did when you were working? And he said, the first week he was off and was retired, he was getting up at 6 o'clock with his wife and going to bed at 9 o'clock. And he said,
Good.
I feel like a whole new human.
Yeah,
I
that's
was like,
awesome.
yeah, you will. Yeah. So there's some other things that can, some other health issues that can cause like persistent elevation, especially in the diastolic pressure, which is that bottom number. It can be kidney diseases, thyroid disorders, or just your thyroid being out of whack, which can happen even with carnivores. Because while we're healing, sometimes that thyroid is like, what's going on here? And it will actually throw out numbers that are abnormal looking, but you'll have no symptoms other than maybe a blood pressure change and pulse change. And then 6 months, year and a half, everything's perfect again and you didn't have to do anything different. It's just part of the healing process. So I think some people run out and the doctors want to throw them on a bunch of medicines. And it's like, sometimes this is just how the body has to heal and get rid of some of this stuff. Other hormone imbalances, which is like cortisol, like what you probably, I'll bet if we did a cortisol test on you, just because of the type of hours you work, my guess is your cortisol would be extremely high, which will throw that off too. Sleep
Huh.
apnea, and I don't know. Do you have sleep apnea?
I have been diagnosed with sleep apnea, but that was way before carnivore. Um,
Okay.
I suspect I've been wanting to get tested again because I don't think I am because my wife says I don't snore anymore.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, and
and
that's the key.
and you know what's funny is I was thinking the other day I need to add it to my list of cures. Something else I noticed is, when I was 240 pounds and out of shape and eating crap, when I would lay down at night to go to bed, I could feel my throat
Feel.
close. I could feel it, and now I don't
Yep.
feel that anymore. So I think that has to do with inflammation. I would
It is.
suspect. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
so
I was good.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say if I have sleep apnea, it's very mild compared to what it was.
Right.
But
Right.
I
Yeah. And just you having had that though can take time for that to part of the system to kind of reboot itself. So, and everybody, I was talking to my boss today about this. I said, one of the nurses that we work with, she's very heavy, doesn't snore at all, no sleep apnea. Another nurse I work with, big as a twig, and she has sleep apnea, horrible. And you always hear, well, it's these people who are fat. It's not necessarily fat, it's inflamed. So this little skinny one, she eats everything that's going to cause inflammation. She doesn't look fat on the outside, but I'd love to see what the plumbing looks like. But
yeah,
she has that sleep apnea because she's got that inflammation, and she underwent a minor surgery with they did have to put her under, and did general anesthesia, so they put her on a breathing tube, and they had difficulty getting her intubated, and that's because those tissues in there are swollen. Doesn't
mhm,
always mean because you're fat, it's because of swelling.
right.
And then the other gal who is heavy set, she just switched to keto, I think 12 days ago, and you can already see it in her face. Like, she had some bags. Um, she had a couple chins, which I used to have three, so I don't give anybody grief for that.
Right.
And but already just in 12 days, it's amazing how all of that inflammation, you can see it in her knuckles, her hands. And I think she's only 43. Um, and she just reached out to me at work one day because I mean they all see how I eat, they know. And she just asked if I would help her at least clean her diet up to keto, And then at some point, if she needs further healing, then to go further. But she said there was no way she was going to be able to jump from standard American diet straight into key or to carnivore. She wanted to do it. And when somebody has a lot of weight to lose, a lot of times that is a good way to start out because you still are going to
Yeah.
do some healing and lose. So
Yeah.
um some other things that can lead to blood pressure, and a lot of people don't realize this, is the medication side effects. So I'm a big proponent as to when I go into the doctor's office with my mom and they want to prescribe something. I'm like, what are the common side effects? What's the 2% side effect? Because that's the one my mother always gets. She's that 2% person. But a lot of medications like antidepressants, anti-inflammatory, so like ibuprofen, Advil, methocarbamol, Mobic, meloxicam, different things like that, those can cause higher blood pressure. Decongestants in your cough medicines can raise blood pressure. If you're taking medications like that, you need to discuss with your doctor, is that something that could be causing elevated blood pressure? And they should know. Now, we talked earlier about this, that you do not feel like you have white coat hypertension. And that's because I think you're well informed enough now when you go in the doctor's office that you know what you know and you're there for the things that you don't know.
Yep.
Um, the other thing they call that is masked hypertension. And that's where some people in a medical setting are so nervous, upset, don't know what's coming, that they will, just because of their response, their fight or flight response has kicked in, and that is going to set up and make your pulse higher, and it's going to make your blood pressure higher. So those are things that, if that's something that you have trouble with, my brother-in-law is that way. If he goes in to if he goes in and has the doctor, or if he goes into the dentist office, I mean, he can be 200 over 100. And at home, he's 122 over 76. And so they were trying to medicate him based on what he was showing up at their office with for one time. And I'm like, no, he's got this white coat syndrome. So I talked them into him getting a home machine, and he just monitors it every day, same time, same way, everything like that. And so that has helped. Yeah, the other thing is that some people, this is not directed to you, some people want their blood pressure to be turned over pretty quickly, and sometimes that's a slow thing happening. Yeah.
That is
It
me.
didn't yeah, it didn't develop overnight, and sometimes it's not going to, it depends the cause, but most of the time, it's not gonna go away super fast. It will go. The other thing is exercise, and that doesn't have to be crazy exercise, and I know you've been really implementing that in.
Big time.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
It,
So that is, anything you can do that way is going to help um, get your blood pressure down. You're going to train your heart. It's a muscle.
so you brought up uh, medications and the side effects. And I had made this, I'm going to share this real quick. I had made this um, to share in a video at some point because at one point I was so mad at, uh, all the when you start researching this stuff and realize what they're doing to you, it just angers you. But can you see that very well? Let me blow this
I
up.
can see it a little.
Actually, let's do this. No, that's not any better, is it? Let me. Let me. So everything here highlighted in yellow are the side effects I had being on these medications. So it's not just the standard American diet. I mean, a huge part of it is, but because of the standard American diet, you start with one, then two, then six medications. And
Yep.
I just wanted to share that real quick. Anybody that watches this, I would highly encourage, if you're on 6 medications, start researching them and see what the side effects are. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And
And
even if
unfortunately,
they should be taken together, because there are times where I would go into somebody's home and they would have all of these meds in a packet, like made up by the pharmacy, so that they just have to tear it open. All of these are to be taken at 6 o'clock. Levothyroxine, which should be taken all by itself on an empty stomach 30 minutes prior before any other medication or a meal. um, Fosamax, which is taken once weekly for women. That's for bone health. They need to take that on an empty stomach with a full glass of water and have to be able to be sitting up for at least an hour. All these things. And then, like I've had just recently, that 97-year-old that had all these high blood pressure pills sitting out in her bottles to lower her blood pressure, and then another bottle of a medication that is to bring your blood pressure up. And I said, "Do you take this every day with the others? Or is this in case you get too low?" And they said, "No, she takes all of those every day." And I'm like, "Come on." I'm like, "This does not make sense." I literally called the doctor's office sitting at her dining room table, and I'm just like, and I have to like reel it in, Laura, reel it in, be nice. But I'm just like, really, why should this fall on somebody outside of her primary care team to have figured out that, duh, look what we're doing to this lady? You know, her poor kidneys couldn't function because the blood pressure in your kidneys are, they're kind of like a serpentine belt. They work together, they work in, um, they just work together. And so when you throw one off with these medications, sometimes it's too much. Then look what happens.
yeah. Hello, Robin.
Lumbro, yeah. Uh, Lumbro kinase and nattokinase. Yep, yep, that is true.
I
I'm
I
gonna
have
go.
heard of
Yep,
those, but
yep,
I
yep.
haven't researched it.
Yeah, and I would look at them and make sure with the other things that you're taking that that's something that you could do. But yes, I have heard of those. I'm going to go over some other supplements also that you can do that have been shown to be beneficial. And some of these, it's kind of funny because some of them, I don't have any blood pressure issue, but I have taken these for a long time. And I think you take some of these already too. Excuse me. So the first one is the omega-3 fatty acids. And even if you're eating fish, I still really think you need to do like a cod liver oil. I just think the benefits are amazing with that. Um, and
So
yeah, go ahead.
I eat, and I do it on purpose for the omega 3s. I eat
Hmm.
at least 3, if not 4 or 5 cans of sardines every week. It's just, and I do it as a snack, not a meal, because you get
Right.
four
They're
or five
little.
sardines. Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
so, but you would still recommend?
I
Uh,
would. Yeah.
okay.
The reason being is because with the fish, you also have the omega-6, and you want to make sure that your omega-3 is higher than your omega-6. And
Mhm.
so if you're taking that supplement, you're going to be able to get that omega-3 higher. But it now the little sardines do you still do the ones that everything's cut off? You don't have to look at their eyeball looking at you.
Yeah, that I do
Okay.
the ones I've been buying mostly is the season something season. I
Okay.
can try to Google that while you talk so we can show the viewers.
Yeah. Yep. So another thing is the magnesium, and there are several forms of magnesium out there. So I do recommend going out and looking up the different types. Some people have like sleep issues, so there's a magnesium that works better for sleep issues. All magnesium, though, is going to help with blood pressure control, but it's just what are your other issues that you have. Um, and what did they say that Emil, was the second thing they said? Oh, for 4 years, yeah. So Emil, with you saying that you suffer from blood clots, do you know if you have a clotting disorder like Fifth's disease? Um, do you know where those are coming from? Because usually you have something wrong with the clotting cascade when you're making clots. So that would be something. But anyway, back on the magnesium, um, I take like the 245 milligrams magnesium glycinate. I take that at bedtime because that does help with sleep. And I do a lot of working out, a lot of, oh, yeah. Yep. I've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep,
so
those are
yeah,
good.
the fins are cut off, the head's cut off, and I think even the tail fin is cut off. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And so you're still eating the skin, the meat, and the bones, which you want all of
Right.
that. Um,
Yep. You
the
do.
the one thing I will emphasize though is you want. Uh, I get the no
Water.
salt just because all the salt we're already including in our diet. You want them to be wild caught, and you want them in water, not in oil, because it's usually going to be in some sort of seed oil. So get them packed in water.
Yep. Absolutely. I
Uh,
agree. Um,
and they're
let's see.
inexpensive. They're very cheap.
Yeah, they are. They are cheap. Yeah. I have bought that kind and they're still in my cabinet because every time I open, even though it says it doesn't have the heads and stuff, and I deer hunt, I field dress my own deer, I can play in somebody's liver. I can go in and if the surgeon's got your chest cracked open, I don't, that doesn't bother me, but something about them stupid little eyeballs looking up at me and I'm just like grossed out.
Well, the season doesn't have the eyeballs. So,
I know,
um,
and I have it in my cabinet. I just haven't brought myself to do it. I actually want to do like a 3-day fast. I did a 2-day fast the other day, just kind of felt like doing it. And then when I'm done with this next fast, I want to break it and I want to do the sardines. Okay,
yeah.
sticky blood from parents. So that means your platelets stick together. There's a couple different things that could be. Um, yeah, I definitely for you with having that, I would be on, I hope you are on a high dose fish oil. And I hope you're eating very high fat because you need lubrication in there in the bloodstream so that those things do not stick together for sure. Um, I'm sure you're taking a blood thinner of some sort. I'm not sure what type you're taking, but I'm guessing that they have you on a medication so that you don't clot. Another medication, well, not medication, this is a natural, this is potassium. And I do the potassium 99 milligrams every night before bed. I've stayed doing the potassium. I do magnesium, K2D3. I do the iodine in my water every day, 2 to 5 drops, 5 days a week. Take the weekends off. And I'm to the point now, but I'll be 5 years next month of carnivore. I don't I still salt all my food, but I haven't been doing like the Soleil water and things like that. Yep, on
You have
Eloquence.
not been doing Soleil. You stopped doing that.
I don't require it anymore, and it's so weird because I needed it every day all these years until just recently, and I'll tell you how I figured it. I mean, I just was drinking it and it tasted like it was horrible tasting to me. And you know how it really shouldn't be. It should be like, hey, this is kind of refreshing. I need that. And I thought, well, I'm sure the hell not built like Mr. Chafee. I know he always says, I don't need salt. And I was like, I need salt. Now I still do the salt in on my food and a plenty of it too. But I haven't been requiring that. And I don't know if it's just because now I'm like getting into this 5th year and I've been doing it for so long that I needed it during that time. But I don't really have any inflammation anymore either. So I'm not losing water. I'm not doing that all the time. And so maybe that's why. That's the only thing I could figure out because I was like, I used to be able to just chug that stuff down like nobody's business. And then all of a sudden I wasn't. And this weekend, we got hit by a derecho last June and it broke off the top of one of our fir trees. and it was just sitting out in the backyard looking like a totem pole. And I was like, that's it. So I was like, let's get the chainsaw. And we got out there and we chopped it down, and then we manhandled it into the truck and everything to get it thrown onto a burn pile. And I come back, and I mean, we were just sweating to death, and it was super hot, out in the
Hmm.
sun for probably an hour and a half, no sunburn. So that's definitely true. After you get all those seed oils out, I don't burn anymore. And I used to burn easy. So that was one thing. And even though I had sweat like that, I did not, I mean, I had my glass of water, but I really didn't have that need to take that extra. But I still do the magnesium and potassium. So I still do that. So that's one. Garlic is another one that has been shown to have cardiovascular benefits. It helps relax the blood vessels, which helps lower the blood pressure. Hibiscus is a plant that's known for its antioxidant properties, and some of the research on hibiscus teas and supplements and show that it helps lower blood pressure by, it's a mild diuretic, so it's going to make you pee. And then it's vasodilatory, which means it opens up the blood vessels, it dilates them, which helps lower the blood pressure. Now, this next one I have taken for over 10 years, but I took it more because I always follow Dr. Berg because I love doing different styles of fasting throughout, just on a whim. I don't set it up to do it specifically. I'll be like, I'm not really hungry today. I'm going to fast. And then I just go. But it's called berberine. So that's Berberine. And it is actually an ancient Chinese herb. And it's bright yellow. It's like this color of yellow. And diabetics, it's also good for diabetics. I have some diabetic patients that somehow got that information and are doing that.
I actually just
Um,
bought some of that, and I've been
did you?
using berberine with my supplements. Yep.
Good, good. Yep. But I just thought that was funny because it is a compound that's found in like golden seal, barberry, and those are shown to lower blood pressure by what it does is it reduces inflammation, and then it helps with the epithelial function and the muscular function of your blood vessels. So it helps them work better together. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I was like, "Oh, maybe that's why my blood pressure's been low for so dang long, is because here I've been taking these things that help with that.
Yeah.
L-arginine, which is an amino acid that the body uses, it produces nitric oxide. It's a molecule that helps relax the blood vessels. Some of the research does suggest that supplementation may lower blood pressure, particularly in individuals who have known endothelial dysfunction. And that's where those blood vessels, um, the endothelial is the muscle part of your vessels, where that's not behaving like it should. Which most people that have had high blood pressure for a long period of time, they have that. Whether they've been told they have it, they have it. So that is another one. So that's the ones that I, you know the most about. Like I said, I've heard of the kinase enzymes. Um, but I would look into those and see how those would work with them. So another thing for him or her, Emil, I'm not sure, for the Eliquist. See, yeah, yeah, the magnesium and berberine are wonderful. Um, and just with you having clotting disorder, I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure if you're doing um, carnivore or ketovore or standard American diet. But I would definitely recommend to try to clean up the diet and get away from things that cause inflammation, because inflammation in the body is inflammation in the blood. It's inflammation in your blood vessels, your brain, your eyes, your prostate, all the body parts that you don't want to have inflammation. It can cause trouble. So I'll have to look
Yeah,
if
I'm looking through
I'll
my
have to
Amazon
find.
cart, and I cannot find, because I know I bought it off of Amazon. I could run
Okay. Give
upstairs
me,
real quick and grab the
I was,
bottle.
okay. Yeah,
Uh,
I was gonna say if you can, yep, yep,
yeah, hang
I
on.
will definitely do that. Yep. Yeah, I like I said, I've taken the berberine for over 10 years, And I did, like I said, I did it more for the fasting because it helps with like the blood sugar, which is why a lot of diabetics are using it. It's kind of similar in the body, working as the way like metformin does, without the side effects that metformin has, like diarrhea and different things like that. Um, so that's what I would definitely try. I would try some of these natural things. Um, Emil, you probably have to be pretty careful, with having a history of making blood clots. Um, so, and I do, like I said, I do the K2D3. A lot of doctors don't
Okay.
want you to
Sorry.
do the K2. You're okay. A lot of doctors don't want you to do the K2 when you're on a blood thinner, but there's like 16 or 17 forms of vitamin K, and everything I can find says that K2 does not interfere with that. But that would be a personal choice if that's something you ever want to try. I would definitely be sure of that. I'd be leery myself if I had that. I probably would not do a K2.
So this is Nutrivane Premium Berberine Plus, and it's made with CEYLON cinnamon. Ceylon.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
let's
Yep.
let me
Yep.
turn.
I'm going to grab mine real quick too, just so I can, because it's the same. I have the same one I've used for 10 years. So I'll be right back.
Okay. And while we're waiting on Laura, if anybody has other questions or comments, she's the expert. I always ask her to join me so I don't sound like an idiot when I'm talking about this because I do not have a medical background. Um, so we'll just wait for Laura really quick here.
All right.
All
So
right.
this is the one that I have used. Like I said, same one I've used for 10 years, maybe 11 now. And it's a berberine with, it says Oregon grape. It's ZHOU. And so I'll show that to you.
CHOU. Yeah. Yeah. The
So
brand I have, oh, yeah, that's like a Chinese word or something, it sounds like.
yeah.
But yeah, the one I bought based off of a recommendation from somebody I was watching on YouTube, and I think they had compared. It's some guy I've watched him before, and he tests different brands and sends them to labs and see which supplement is truly better than the others. Um,
Yeah. Perfect. I definitely stay away from, yeah. Me too. Because yes, yeah, the vitamin K that is in like the green leafy vegetables is the K1. That's the same thing. And I'm not sure if you've ever taken this medication, but Coumadin or warfarin is an older blood thinner that they've used on a lot of people, and still to this day they use. And so if somebody would accidentally take too much of that, being like sometimes an elderly person, they forget they took it and they take too much. The antidote is we give them 1 milligram IM intermuscular vitamin K shot. And that, or I'm like, eat some broccoli. That'll usually do it.
oh, that's a good question. Is there
Yeah.
any contradiction to taking berberine K2 and
I can say that with the berberine and the K2, I can't think of any reason why those would not be able to be taken together. They work completely differently. Berberine helps with like the endothelial. K2, if you're doing that with D3, or if you're just doing K2 by itself, it works on transporting calcium out of those blood vessels, out of the joints, and it doesn't really have anything to do per se with the actual muscular part of that. It doesn't relax the blood vessels, which is more of what the kinase does. And so I always recommend that you slowly start on these types of things. Pay attention to how you feel, how your pressure does. If I took all of that, like I do the berberine and the K2, but my blood pressure is low. Like my blood pressure today was 88/54, and that's what I run. But if I added in another, like if I added in one of the kinases, I mean, I'd probably be on the floor because I don't need it. So, but I would just try different things out and do it slowly because you can always take yourself slowly back off of those things. Um, there tends to be less side effects with most of the natural alternatives. I shouldn't even call them alternatives because really they were here first. So the natural medicines were here, and then pharmaceutical medications are the new with all the side effects. I mean, if you just watch the commercials for the Ozempic where the lady's wearing the yellow dress, I mean, that just drives me absolutely insane. But if you close your eyes and you look at and just listen to the side effects, I mean, they just rattle it off. And you're like, oh yeah, great. I want to have permanent liver damage and be blind. And it's just crazy what some of the side effects are. Um, but I always tell people if you want to go down a really deep rabbit hole when it comes to the medical, is you can start in the early 1900s and just I wouldn't say go to Google because Google's getting really well controlled. But I would go to a search engine that's not going to like keep track of everything you look up, like a DuckDuckGo. I think there's some other options. That's the one I use. And just type in what happened to all the holistic medical schools in the early 1900s, and you'll
Well,
be amazed at what you see.
and we talked about that once before. What was the name of that blood pressure or that video? Was
I think that was the cholesterol lie, maybe.
yeah, statin discussion with healthy carnivore. So if you guys want to see more of what she's talking about here, we actually did a video. Looks like January 23rd. We did a video and we talked a lot about that and just the corruption within the medical system and how the
And we
food
can link
industry's gotten us
further.
sick. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was like a page and a half of all of the studies that have been out there. None of these are brand new studies. Even the most recent one on cholesterol in 2020 was just them looking at a plethora of these other ones and putting all those numbers and computing those together and then saying, this is what this showed up. This is da da. Um, let's see, mine's pretty good size.
Mine is 1,200 milligrams. What's yours?
Mine is, yep, 1200. So mine's, yep, about the same size,
Wow,
bright
they look
yellow.
almost the same. They look almost
Yep,
identical. So,
yep. So just a little bit bigger than like a Tylenol gel cap, like your rapid release. I'd say just a little bit bigger than that. Um, I figure I can eat a whole steak in like 4 bites. I don't have any trouble getting medication down or vitamins. I have that. But back on that cholesterol thing that we did, the amount of information that's in that video, I really do recommend you guys going and looking for either on his channel, which is Carnivore Hunters, or on my channel. I shared it on there. It like I said, he has a ton of links to different studies, and these studies were, like I said, some of these were done 1900s, early 1900s, all the way up through like I think one of the more recent ones was maybe, let's see, statins came out in 1987. They did another one 5 years after that. And of course, there was this big jump in Alzheimer's and dementia, Parkinson's, ALS, and MS. That was the end of that because
mhm.
they don't have to. This is the other thing. People think every study that is ever started and completed that you get that information. You actually don't. If they don't like what it said and they can't find a way to skew the numbers and to mess with it, you'll never know it was ever done
Yep, they
because
bury
until
it.
somebody finds, yep, they bury it. And so that has happened multiple times too. So that's where I say you have to kind of be um, the commander of your health. And, I work in the medical system and I have for over 21 years. And I can tell you that a lot of the people that work in the medical industry are good people by heart. They work for corrupt institutions. And what I have to say about that is that's a choice to work for those kind of institutions. And I say bravo to some of these doctors who have taken the stand and went out on their own, like Dr. Baker has Rivero, and I think he has doctors in all 50 states. I think there's like three other ones right now that I know of that have come out and done stuff to where to do it the right way. They don't have to follow the Standard of Care Act when they're not working for these big corporate conglomerates. Because anybody that has this idea of going to the hospital, um, if you have something catastrophic, you fall, you break a bone, you got to go. If you have to have a surgery and there's no way around it, then yes, that's where you go. They have great emergency care. But when it comes to everyday, day to day health, I wouldn't go into a physician's office with my ex husband's body. I mean, it just ain't going to do it because they don't know how to treat chronic diseases. They don't know how to cure chronic diseases. They know how to treat chronic symptoms. And they will do that for your whole life until you die. And then they'll get the next set of people, probably your children, and they'll do the same thing with them for 40
Yeah.
years.
And it can all be healed with diet. Well, not all of it. A good majority of it can be healed with diet and nutrition. That's what I've learned. My health has improved immensely. Other than my
Yeah.
blood pressure still needs some work, and my kidneys still need some work, but
Yeah.
they're slowly improving over time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
let's see, we have another question.
Oh, yes, they are the biggest pharmaceutical state. You better believe it. Yes, they
Interesting.
do. Yeah. I had somebody, one of my patient's family members, who knows my Second Amendment stance, and was like, the NRA um, lobbied this amount of money to Congress. And I was like, yes, let's look this up right now. So yes, they did. And it was this X amount of dollars. And it was a million, but it wasn't like, I said, now let's look at pharmaceutical companies and let's look at big food and let's see how much they lobbied Congress. And it was in the trillions of dollars. And that was funny. That was the whole end of that conversation because I'm like, I don't believe in any lobbyist, whether it's the NRA, whether it's big. I just don't think there should be lobbyist money going for anything. I think it needs
Yeah.
to be taking care of the people, but we have set the system up incorrectly. So I fathom up to this. Okay. When you go to a chiropractor, if you go to the chiropractor and after the third visit, you're like, I'm still not better. This arm still is killing me. You're not going to go back. So it's based on how well does he take care of you, whether he gets paid. But if you go to your physician and you're like, man, you gave me that pain pill and it's a little better, but it's not better. I need some. Oh, okay, we'll try something else. It's going to take 6 to 9 weeks. We'll have you come back. And you'll do that for years because you think that they're going to get to the bottom of it. It's never holding them accountable for them not getting to what the root cause is. And that's the other problem that I see being in the healthcare system is nobody looks at the root cause of what's going on with these people. And the majority of the patients I take care of, no matter what their age is, they have metabolic diseases that have led them to the sickness that they have, the state that
Yeah.
they're in. And that absolutely is treatable. And I would say that 90% of what's wrong with most people could be cured by what they do, what they put in their mouth. It's no different than an engine. You put a certain type of gasoline in your engine because you want your motor to run clean. We're no different. We have to break down food, water, whatever it may be, whatever we drink, eat, smoke, inhale, the things we're around, our body has to break that down. So we can either make it easy on ourselves and eat the way we're supposed to, ancestral, the way I mean, if you look back at evolution and the last 150 years is this big out of this long of a history, well, and the diseases are in this last 150 years, then I don't think what we did prior, which was eating primarily meat, some berries, and the occasional whatever else they could get their hands on, I don't think that's what caused the last 150 years of sickness. I think it's probably what they changed in that last 150 years. I think they
Yep.
call that deductive reasoning.
Yeah. Yeah. It all started with the seed oils. It's
And it's
just
horrible.
amazing when you look at that history. Do you have any other
Yeah,
good?
seed oils.
Oh,
Yes,
go ahead.
I think that's a great one. I think that is another good rabbit hole to go down is seed oils, how they're produced, why were they ever started to begin with? And then if you
Hmm.
want a third one to go into, check out where the fluoride comes from that they use in your toothpaste and at your dentist office and in most of your water. Get a filter that filters it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have any good little tidbits for the blood pressure discussion? Um,
Yeah, I would say circadian rhythm, sleeping is going to be a big deal. So you're only going to be able to do the best you can with the shift, the hours that you work.
mhm.
I'm going to recommend something that you're probably going to think is crazy because it's what I did when I was a night shift worker. Um, I actually would try to sleep when if I was off work, if I came home, I would try to sleep, 6, 8 hours, probably 6 most of the time, then get up and do stuff during the day with the family, and then I would actually go to bed at a normal time. My thought process in the beginning, though, was like you. I was like, "I wanna stay on this so it's not so hard for my body," but my body needed that time to heal, and when you get your rest is the best time for your healing. So,
Yeah. I used to do that years ago before, when I was raising kids. Um, Now I'm an empty nester, which is why I kind of try, if I have 2 or 3 weeks where I don't have, seeing the grandkids or my kids or family and friends, I just stick to that night shift because I function better, I feel like. But when hunting season comes up and all the other stuff we like to do throughout the year, and we're coming up on that pretty quick here. Like all my
yeah,
vacations pretty much start in September with ATV riding and hunting and everything else.
sure.
And so that's what September, October, November, I'm going to be screwed. But it's the price you got to
Yeah.
pay.
So it is. And so the other things that you can do is what you're doing. You're doing different supplements, you're doing the exercise, you're doing the proper human diet, and you just have to wait for the body to do its healing because it will get there. It's just not an overnight process. And you see some of these people that are like, "Oh, overnight I didn't have AFib after I went carnivore." I don't buy that for 1 minute, not 1 minute, not
Yeah.
1 minute. I'm not saying you can't reverse AFib. I've had patients that reversed AFib, cleaning up their diet, but it did not. I've never seen anything like that turn around overnight. Depression, anxiety, OCD, some of those things that are hormonal that can be switched a little faster. Yes, but I think kidney disorders, heart disorders, some of the eye disorders take a little more time. Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, ALS, and MS. I've seen great benefits with, but it does take time. So I think just sticking with what you're doing, I think you'll get there. It's just baby steps.
Yeah. Well, and eventually I'll make it back to a day shift, right? I'm just waiting on some people to retire so I can roll into their positions and they'll bring on the next night shift worker. So it'll probably
Yeah,
be another year or two before I can go to a day shift. Uh, it, but I knew what I was getting into when I took the position too, right? And it was a position I wanted and, and I got it. So now I just got to do my time, like,
yeah.
go through that whole seniority thing.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yep.
all right. Well, unless you have anything else, I think we've been
I
an hour and almost 10 minutes. So,
Yep. Yep.
um,
I appreciate everybody for asking questions too and um letting us in on a little bit of the things, some of the things that you guys have as well, because it's always interesting to know some of these other conditions that are out there.
Yeah, and actually, before we sign off, tell them where they can find you. I think you did
Oh,
earlier, but why don't you just remind them?
yeah. Yep. So my YouTube channel is at Healthy Carnivore. And then if you don't mind some political, and I'm usually kicked off Facebook, you can find me on Facebook at LP Russell. I do believe I have American flags. I'm one of those kind of people. So that's just the way it is. I also am on Instagram, which is healthy underscore and underscore carnivore.
Very good. All
All
right,
right.
and actually, yeah, you can find the Carnivore Hunters on Facebook and on Instagram as well. We're not as active there, so probably not going to see a whole lot from us, but we drop some stuff on there from time to time. So, all
Perfect.
right. Well, Laura, thank you again so much for agreeing to discuss this with me. I'm not a medical professional, and so as I'm learning and I see stuff like two different blood pressures on each arm, and I'm going WTF,
Yeah.
I like to have you on because you can talk about it in a way that everybody can understand easily, and so I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yep. You're welcome.
All right. Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone. And we will talk to you all soon.
All right. See ya.